Are you spending big on Google Ads, but not seeing the growth you expected? I've managed over $50 million in ad spend for Ecom brands, and I've seen the same painful mistakes over and over again. So in this video, I'm going to share 20 brutal truths that will help you scale revenue and protect profit. And most importantly, stop paying for fake return on ad spend that doesn't actually grow your business. Let's start with scaling, because this is the #1 place Ecom brands blow money. These first lessons are all about patience, pacing, and avoiding the most expensive mistakes I see in almost every ad account. Lesson 1, you'd be amazed how often I see this mistake. I once worked with a supplement brand that decided to double their ad spend overnight. They thought if they spent twice as much, they would get twice the sales. What actually happened? Their return on ad spend collapsed. Profit disappeared, and within a week, the account was in free fall. I know the temptation. I've made the same mistake myself when I was younger, chasing quick wins. But Google doesn't work that way. The algorithm needs time to learn, and your cash flow needs stability, not chaos. So here's what we did. We pulled the budget back, set clear guardrails, and started scaling in a smaller, more controlled manner. Instead of doubling overnight, we increased spend by a maximum of 20% at a time, giving the system space to adjust. Within 2 weeks, profit rebounded. Sales growth returned, and this time it stuck. Lesson number 1, scaling too fast destroys profit. Slow, steady scaling wins every time with Google Ads. One of the worst habits I had early on in my Google Ads days was logging in every single day and tweaking and touching things. I'd change bids here, adjust budgets there, play with audience targeting, thinking I was optimizing, but what I was really doing was confusing the algorithm. Google never had enough time to learn what was actually working, and the result was chaos. My sales would swing wildly week to week, and I never knew what I was going to get. It wasn't until I forced myself to stop tinkering that things turned around. I set clear change windows where I'd review performance on a schedule instead of daily. I batched changes, made them deliberately, and then left campaigns alone to run. Within a few weeks, performance stabilized, ROAS climbed, sales became predictable, and I finally felt like I was in control of the account instead of the other way around. Lesson number 2, making too many changes too often kills performance. Sometimes the best optimization is restraint. One of the biggest mistakes I see, and I've lost count of how many times this has happened, is brands shutting down campaigns way too early. Here's how it actually plays out. A founder launches a new campaign, checks back in 3 or 4 days later, and sees choppy results. Panic sets in, they pause it, convinced it's just not working. But the problem isn't the campaign, it's the lack of patience. Google's algorithm needs time to learn. It's like planting seeds and expecting fruit the next morning. Some of the best results I've ever delivered have come from campaigns that run for months, even years, without major interruption. For one client, just letting the campaign run for 6 weeks instead of hitting the pause button in week 1 was the difference between losing money and scaling profitably. Once Google had enough time to find the right buyers, performance completely turned around. Lesson number 3, you're not running campaigns long enough to see real results. Patience is one of the most powerful optimizations you can make. I'll never forget this one. A US-based fashion brand came to me frustrated because their Google ads weren't working. When I got into their account, I couldn't believe what I was looking at. They had 18 different campaigns running for just a handful of products. The budget was spread so thin that no single campaign could get enough data to learn. It was like trying to fill 18 cups with a dripping tap. Nothing ever filled up, and performance was a mess. So here's what we did. We scrapped the clutter, consolidated everything down to just 3 clear campaigns, each with a specific role. Suddenly, Google had the clarity it needed. The results were dramatic. The return on ad spend doubled from 3 to 6, and sales actually grew, even though they were spending less than before. Lesson number 4, having too many campaigns kills performance, especially at lower budgets. Consolidation gives Google the focus it needs to deliver results. Once you've slowed down and avoided those scaling pitfalls, the next place most brands mess things up is structure. If you get this wrong, your budget gets scattered and growth stalls. So let's look at how to build the right foundation in your ad account. When I first started managing accounts, I thought the key to winning was complexity. I stuffed campaigns full of hacks and tricks I picked up from blog posts, LinkedIn, Facebook groups. Every time I found a new tactic, I added it, thinking more layers meant more control. But the opposite happened. My accounts became messy, results were inconsistent, and scaling was almost impossible. Eventually, I stripped everything back. I built a clean, simple structure where every campaign had a clear purpose and budget. No clutter, no gimmicks. That's when performance stabilized. Return on ad spend improved, scaling became predictable, and clients stopped calling me in a panic every week. Lesson number 5, proper account structure beats fancy tactics. Keep it simple, keep it focused, and you'll win. Lesson 6, I worked with a backpack brand that had gone all in on Google Ads. The problem was they launched everything at once. Search, shopping, display, performance max. You name it, they were running it. On paper, it looked like they were covering every angle. In reality, the account was a mess. Budget was scattered, campaigns were fighting each other, and performance was unpredictable. So I pulled them back. We shut down the noise and focused only on shopping campaigns. That became the foundation. We gave Google one clear job to do, and suddenly the account settled down. Their CPA dropped, sales grew steadily, and for the first time, they felt confident the platform could scale. Once shopping was humming, we slowly layered in other campaign types. This time it worked because the foundation was solid. Lesson number 6, master shopping or performance max first, then expand. Build from a strong base instead of trying to do everything at once. Lesson 7, a fashion e-commerce brand once bragged to me they were getting over a 20x return on ad spend on Google. On the surface, that number looked incredible. Who wouldn't want that, right? But when I dug into the account, the picture was very different. More than 90% of their conversions were coming from branded terms. In other words, people were already searching for their brand name, clicking an ad and buying. Google was taking credit for sales that probably would have happened anyway. So I split branded traffic away from non-branded traffic and built dedicated cold traffic campaigns. That's when the truth came out. The 20x return on ad spend dropped to a much more realistic figure, but the brand started to see real incremental growth at the top line. Sales were actually increasing because we were finally reaching new customers. Lesson number 7, branded traffic inflates your return on ad spend. Separate it to see the truth and unlock real growth. Even with a clean structure, Google can still trick you into thinking you're winning when you're not. This next section is about attribution, goals, and strategy, and how to actually read numbers the right way. Lesson 8. I was working with an Australian tea brand, and on paper, their numbers looked great. Return on ad spend was high, conversions were flowing, and the account looked like it was crushing it. But when I dug deeper, I realized 80% of their spend was going into remarketing and branded traffic. Essentially, they were paying for customers who were already going to buy anyway. It looked like they were scaling, but in reality, they weren't acquiring new customers. So I capped remarketing, cut back the branded spend, and shifted more budget into prospecting campaigns that could actually bring in fresh buyers. Within weeks, their new customer growth surged and they started scaling for real. Lesson number 8, too much remarketing makes you think you're winning when you're just recycling customers you already had. Lesson 9, I once sat down with a leadership team of a large fashion brand. They told me point blank, Google ads aren't incremental. Every time we increase budgets, return on ad spend tanks, and overall sales don't move. On the surface, they were right. When they pushed more spend into Performance Max, the returns looked worse. And the board assumed the platform was broken. But the real problem wasn't Google. It was how they were running it. They weren't tracking new customers. And their Performance Max campaigns weren't segmented properly. The algorithm was learning on brand and remarketing instead of finding fresh buyers. Fixed both issues, set up proper new customer tracking, segmented their campaigns so branded spend wasn't being ring-fenced, and gave Google a clear mandate. Go find people who hadn't bought before. The impact was immediate. For the first time, they could see real incremental lift. And about 40% of sales started coming from brand new customers, not just recycled ones. Lesson number 9, the idea that Google ads aren't incremental is a myth. With the right strategy and tracking, you can prove they drive real, net new growth. Lesson 10, when Google launched Performance Max, I'll admit, I bought into the hype. Google positioned it as an all-in-one solution. Something that would do everything for you in just one campaign, load it up with some creative, give it some assets, give it a budget, and watch the sales roll in. But here's what really happened for most brands. PMax just leaned heavily on branded search. Instead of finding new customers, it turned into a glorified branded campaign, which, as we said, is not good. Making return on ad spend look amazing while not actually driving growth. I learned this the hard way. You can't just dump everything into PMax and hope it works. You need a proper strategy. That means segmenting out branded traffic, structuring campaigns deliberately, and giving the algorithm clear boundaries. So it doesn't take the easy way out. Once I did that, PMax went from misleading vanity tool. Once I did that, PMax went from a misleading vanity tool to something that could actually scale accounts properly. But it took discipline and strategy, not blind faith in Google's marketing. Lesson 10, Performance Max isn't a magic bullet. Without structure, it's just branded search in disguise. Lesson 11, I once worked with a founder who was torn in two directions. On the one hand, they wanted to grow revenue as fast as possible. On the other hand, they wanted to keep their return on ad spend sky high. The problem is, those two goals fight against each other. When we pushed hard for revenue growth, ROAS did fall. When we dialed back to protect ROAS, growth stalled. They were stuck in this endless tug of war, frustrated that nothing seemed to work. So I asked a simple question. What's the real priority right now? Do you want more top-line revenue growth and customer acquisition, or do you want to protect margins and maximize profitability? Once we get clarity on that, everything changed. We made profit the priority first. We structured the account, aligned targets with that goal, and within a quarter, net margins were actually up 25%. Only then did we start shifting a strategy towards something more aggressive and focused on revenue growth. Lesson 11, you can't optimize for profit and revenue all at the same time, not easily. Pick one and focus, and then come back once you've nailed it and focus on the next thing. Lesson 12, when I first got into Google Ads, I obsessed over bidding strategies, manual CPC, maximize conversions, target return on ad spend. I tried them all. convinced there was a secret formula that would unlock success. I'd spend hours tweaking settings, testing strategies, and arguing with other media buyers about which one is best. And you know what? None of it mattered when the fundamentals weren't in place. I learned this the hard way with a client who had a weak product. No matter what bidding strategy we used, it didn't sell. The product had no real demand, poor margins, and didn't allow for repeat buyers. You cannot bid your way out of a broken business model. On the flip side, when I worked with brands that had strong products, good margins, clean account structure, almost any bidding strategy worked. Some were more efficient than others, sure, but the fundamentals made the difference, not the bidding strategy itself. Lesson 12, no bidding strategy will save a bad product or business. Get the basics right first and the bidding will take care of itself. Now let's talk about wasted spend and product strategy, because even if your campaigns are set up well, the wrong keywords or the wrong products can bleed money faster than almost anything else. Lesson 13. I once audited an account that made me feel sick to my stomach. There it was, plain as day. Over $75,000 had been spent on a single irrelevant search term. Not a single sale, just money burnt. The store owner had no idea. They assumed Google was spending smart and they weren't digging into their search term reports. The waste kept piling up. When I showed them, they couldn't believe it. We cut the term immediately and I built in a regular review process where we checked and trimmed search queries every single week. Within days, the wasted spend stopped. Within weeks, their budget was flowing into profitable keywords instead of dead ends, and performance improved dramatically. One of my clients was an electric bike brand. They were doing well, but then something shifted. Performance started dropping fast and they couldn't figure out why. When I dug into it, I realized they'd changed their product mix. They'd introduced more lower value bikes and accessories, and the algorithm had shifted spend towards those cheaper items. Sure, conversions went up, but the average order value plummeted, and so did profitability. The fix was simple, but important. We rebalanced spend to focus on higher value products, adjusted targets, and made sure the algorithm was being trained on the items that actually drove margin. Lesson 14, always review your search term reports. Irrelevant terms can quietly burn tens of thousands before you even notice. Very quickly, performance recovered and scaling was back on track. Lesson, your product mix directly impacts your ads. If you make changes in a silo without considering marketing, the algorithm will optimize for the wrong outcomes. And finally, none of this matters if your products, feed, and operations aren't ready for scale. This last section is about stability, the hidden details that make the difference between erratic results and consistent growth. I've audited hundreds of Google ad accounts, and one of the biggest silent killers I see is the product feed. I'll open it up and find titles like black shirt or product 123. Now think about it. Yes, some people are typing black shirt, but not many people are going to type black shirt and expect to find your product. People are searching with intent. They're looking for men's slim fit black shirt or women's organic cotton shirt. If your feed doesn't match what they're typing, you'll lose before the auction even starts. I worked with a brand where this was happening. Their click-through rate was terrible, costs were high, and they couldn't understand why. We went through the feed, optimized titles, categories and keywords so they matched search intent. Almost immediately, click-through rate and conversion rates jumped. The cost per click dropped, and suddenly they were visible for the right searches. Google is about accuracy and intent. Win the feed and you win the click and the sale. Lesson 16. One of the fastest ways to blow money on Google Ads is to run out of stock on your best sellers. I had a client whose hero products went out of stock right in the middle of Q4, their busiest, most profitable season. The campaigns kept spending, but because the top products were gone, sales collapsed. They lost thousands in wasted spend before we caught it. Once we identified the issue, I redirected the budget into substitute products, adjusted targets, and put guardrails in place to stop the algorithm from over-investing in items that weren't available. It saved the campaign, but it was a lesson learnt the hard way. Now, I make sure I've built in stock monitoring and alerts into every ad account. Staying in stock isn't just an operations problem, it's one of the most important parts of running profitable ads. Lesson, staying in stock on bestsellers is crucial. If you don't, your ads will keep spending while sales will diminish. When I was running my own e-commerce store, I learned this the hard way. My Merchant Center account was suspended for around 4 days and I didn't even notice until my sales fell off a cliff. We were still spending money, but our products weren't really showing properly. Customers couldn't buy and it was a complete blackout. After that painful experience, I built daily health checks into my process. Now, every account I manage has systems to flag disapprovals, suspensions, or errors immediately. It's not glamorous work, but it saves thousands in lost sales. Most brands never check their uptime until it's too late. But if your merchant center or ad account goes down, even for a day, it can undo weeks of progress. So the lesson is, keep your ads and merchant center uptime as close to 100% as possible. Every hour of downtime is money left on the table. Most of the clients who come to me have the same story. Their Meta ad agency is also running their Google ads. And almost every time the results are bad. Here's why. Meta and Google might both be ad platforms, but they work completely different. Meta is about interruption, creative testing. Meta is about interruption marketing and creative testing. Google is about intent, structure, and patience. When you try to run Google the same way you run Meta, it fails. One client in particular had been with a Meta agency that created Google like a side project. They constantly changed things, tested endlessly, and never gave campaigns the stability they needed. The account was a mess. When I rebuilt it with a Google-specific framework, focused on shopping, clean segmentation, and patience, performance turned around almost immediately. Sales climbed, costs dropped, and for the first time, the client saw what Google could really do. Lesson, most Meta agencies are terrible at Google ads. If you want real results, work with a specialist who actually knows how to scale brands on this platform. Lesson 19. I hear this all the time from founders. Google ads are too expensive. And at first glance, they're not wrong. CPCs can look high, and when the results don't come quickly, it feels like you're burning cash. I had a client come to me with this exact problem. They'd try and run in Google themselves, but CPCs were sky high, and they couldn't make the numbers work. They were ready to give up on the platform entirely. Instead, I rebuilt their account using my scaling framework. We cut wasted ad spend and optimized their product feed and tightened up campaign structure so Google was matching the right products with the right intent. Within weeks, CPCs dropped by more than 75% and sales actually increased at the same time. The founder couldn't believe it. What they thought was an expensive, unprofitable channel became their most reliable growth engine. Lesson number 19. Google ads aren't too expensive. You just need the right strategy to unlock their potential. Lesson 20. One of the biggest shocks I've seen in e-commerce is how quickly brands can lose an entire channel. A luxury handbag client of mine learnt this the hard way. When their Meta account was banned, overnight. No warning, no appeal that worked, just gone. Their main growth channel had disappeared. They came to me in a panic, desperate to find a way to keep sales coming in. We rebuilt their ad strategy on Google, starting with shopping and then layering on more campaigns once the foundation was solid. The results surprised even them. Not only did Google replace what they lost from Meta, It gave them more consistency. Week after week, month after month, sales flowed predictably without the wild swings they were used to on Meta. Lesson 20. Google Ads are the most stable and consistent e-com channel. When other platforms let you down, Google keeps delivering. So those are the 20 brutal truths I've learned after managing more than $50 million in Google Ads for e-commerce brands. Here's the big takeaway. Google Ads can be your most stable and profitable growth channel, but only if you avoid the mistakes most brands make. Scale too fast, chase vanity return on ad spend, or overcomplicate structure, and you'll bleed money. But if you stay patient, keep things simple, and focus on clarity and intent, Google will reward you with consistent, profitable sales growth. Now, if you want to go deeper and see the exact framework I use in 2025 to scale e-commerce brands profitably and sustainably, watch the next video here. It'll walk you step by step through the system so you can grow faster without wasting budget. I'll also leave a link below to download a version of the framework as well. Thank you so much, and I will see you in the next video.